Welcome. I'm Ruby Burrito,
I'm Astrid.
and this video is mostly just going to be about picking a character to play.
Yeah.
So the footage in the background is me going through all 5 races, both male and female, and going through the 9 different professions and showing what they can look like with the armor that they get. So for races you have Char, Norn, Human, Asura, and Sylvari. And you're gonna get a good idea of their aesthetic just from looking at the background. I mean, the Char are feline humanoids. The Norn are not giants, but much larger than humans. Those are the two.
They're kind of more like giants, though.
I mean, they are. They are.
It's like the scene from what's that movie? It's like the scene from what's that movie? Ella Enchanted, when she goes and she starts singing in Giantsville. Like they're just normal people, but they're just massive. That's what that's like.
Nice.
You have no idea what I'm talking about.
No.
Figured.
The Norn and the Char are the 2 largest races. Then you have Human, which is the stereotypical human, and then Asura are the smallest. They're people kind of call them mouse-like creatures.
Yeah, they're
typically.
tiny rats.
They used to live underground, and then the Sylvari are plant humanoids. You can have a lot of fun playing with the different customization and everything, but ultimately the race boils down to aesthetic. There are some racial skills, but pretty much since launch, they, again, are just aesthetic. They're not useful, they're not meta. You'll never pick them over something else for your utility skills. So what I would suggest is to combine what you want to play with the aesthetic of whichever race you think fits that profession. So there's 3 sets of professions. There's heavy, medium, and light in order from top to bottom on the screen. You have Guardian, Warrior, and Revenant for heavy, Engineer, Thief, and Ranger for medium, Mesmer, Necro, and Elementalist for light. Revenant is the newest edition. At launch there was only 8. Revenant came out with the first expansion. And speaking of expansions, each one of these is going to have an elite specialization which adds a new weapon and play style. It changes the
Skills.
it gives you new utilities. It changes your play style. There's each profession has a profession mechanic, and it changes those interactions for each one. So there's now 3 expansions, so there's 3 elite specs. So there's it almost feels like 27 different professions. But picking one of the 9 gives you access to the 3, and you can change them whenever you want. You just might need to change your gear. Next, I would say that for the most part, any one of these professions can play any type of role. One of the few, there's some limitations. For example, a warrior isn't going to be able to heal, but they can be a support. There'll be more boons, crowd control, so it'll be shouts, banners, things like that that'll help buff your allies as opposed to directly healing them. But warriors also can do quite a bit of damage. So
I feel like this also gets more simpler, like, the more you play the game. So, like, if for, like, beginners who have never played the game before, like, what would you suggest?
I would say either a necromancer or a ranger. Wooden Potatoes is one of the largest YouTubers for Guild Wars, and he did a playthrough with Ranger where he beat the entire base storyline without using any of his actual attacks. It was all ranger pet attacks. So that, I would say, is not easy mode, but close to it. He obviously knew what he was doing, so that helped. But then Necros also are very helpful, because Necros have the largest health pool of any profession in the game, even though they're light armor. And they have, at the very least for most of the elite specializations, they have a second health pool that they can dip into. That's their profession mechanic, is a death shroud. So I love playing Necro. It gives you a whole new set of abilities to go in a shroud, and it's a second health bar, which can be extremely helpful for doing solo content. Like the other day we did dungeons and duos. We were both running Necro. I started running Warrior because I had done the story on my Warrior, and we wanted to do explorable paths, and you need to do the story first. And I struggled on my Warrior, but as soon as I switched to the Necro, we beat the boss first try. Yeah, first try. So I would say Necro would be my favorite. I also like the aesthetic of Necros. They're very fun. I would also suggest if you buy the expansions, they typically give you a level 80 boost. I would suggest not using that until you've gotten to level 80 on your own. And to get to level 80, I would say do a combination of story and exploration, because map exploration is extremely fun the first time you do it, and the more time you put in between each map completion, the more fun each one of them is going to be.
The more sane you remain.
The more sane you remain, coming from somebody who did 10 in the last pretty much year at this point. I did a lot of map exploration, and it is time consuming, but it was really cool the first time I did it, because I did my first map completion, like, I think within 2 years of the game coming out, and it was really cool to see all the different areas that they had. And you need map exploration if you want to ever craft a legendary weapon, and it makes that decision to go for that a lot easier if you already have that weapon. Plus, it gives you the opportunity to try a whole bunch of different types of combat. You see a whole bunch of different types of enemies. If you're playing through the story fully, you do dungeons, which is harder content than the regular story, and it gives you a good idea of what the combat is like. And when you're trying out the level 80s, you can try out a bunch of different ones in the level 80 zone before you commit, and that will help you figure out what kind of play style you want to go with. Oh, hi, Bram. Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I think that's good. I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things that you just have to like get yourself started. I think getting yourself started is probably the hardest part.
Yeah, I had you start out on a ranger because I knew you would like the pets.
Oh my god, I love the pets.
And that's another cool aspect. That's another reason why I say start out on ranger, because you don't to get the pets, you have to find them in Tyria, and then you unlock them on your character. It's all character bounded. If you have 2 rangers, they're not going to have the same pets available. So in the background now, I'm finishing up character creation. That was the last thing I wanted to talk about. So there's a lot of different aspects to the character creation. There's a ton of different ways to change your character model, but at the end of it, you pick a personality trait that does not matter anymore, that doesn't interact in the game at this point in 2022. And the other options are basically what you want to do in the story. So, for example, one of the questions was, in the dream, I saw the image of a stag, a shield, or I think it's a knight. and each one of those is just a different story mission. And so once you get to a certain point in the story, everybody converges anyways. Well, there's a point where it splits in 3, but it's very early story. I think by level 30 or 40, none of that matters anymore. Thank you. I thought the mustache would look good. Divinity's Reach. Oh, that's not. Oh, that's all concept art. Sylvari are one of the more intriguing. Yeah, so I chose the White Stag in this one, so I will do the Stag mission. And so that's honestly, I think the other ones will have an impact, but ultimately when it comes down to it, if you're making a character in 2022 and you're not planning on doing the story like I've done a bunch of times, because I've got I think 19 characters now, it doesn't matter whatsoever because I didn't end up doing that story. So I think that'll be all.
Yeah.
We'll see you in the next one.